everyone, welcome back to Simming History, where we look at the history of architecture through the lens of The Sims. Before we get started today, if you like the videos, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Today we're going to look at something that's not related to history of architecture, but rather, what does it take to go from idea to construction? So let's say you live in a 100-year-old house that's larger than what you need or want, and you want to downsize into something smaller that has significantly less maintenance than a 100-year-old home. What do you do? Well, first you need to find yourself an architect. If you don't have one in your family, then you need to go find one out in the world. And there are several resources for this. There is, of course, the Google, but there are also professional groups that could help you find a residential architect. In the United States, there's the AIA, the American Institute of Architects. There's also your state registration and licensure board. So let's say, using one of those resources, you have found one. Well, typically you enter into a contract. It's called the Owner-Architect's Agreement. It lays out what you're going to get in exchange for what fee. So what kind of construction documents, what kind of construction administration, that sort of thing. And then you're going to enter into the design phases. There are several phases in architecture leading up to construction. The very first is the conceptual design phase. In the conceptual design phase, you're going to look at things like establishing a budget. You're also going to take a look at preliminary program. In an ideal situation, your architect will sit down with you and go over what your wants and needs are. The architect's also going to research local code and zoning. In this instance, the local code and zoning is pretty much the same as everywhere else in my state, so I already know them. You're also going to finalize the site. Now, in some instances, the owner and the architect work together to determine what the site is. In other instances, the owner has already purchased a site, and it's up to the architect to design the house that's on that predetermined site. To do that, the architect's got to do some research. There's a lot of research in this phase. They need to research site grading, utility availability, and whether there are any unknowns. Almost forgot one of the most important parts, the preliminary program, which is typically separated into needs and wants. Needs, we need a living room, a kitchen, a dining or eating space, a bath and laundry, some kind of bedroom, and a screened-in porch. Wants, obviously low maintenance, energy efficient, accessible, and with an ultimate goal of no utility bills. So let's start taking a look at how some of these spaces could be laid out. Typically, what we'd use in this instance in conceptual design is something called bubble diagrams. It's literally you write like kitchen and draw a circle around it, and you just sort of determine what spaces you want next to the kitchen, immediate adjacency versus nearby. But watching me draw a bunch of bubble diagrams is really not going to be that interesting for you guys, so I figured we'll do the conceptual design in Sims. This is, after all, Simming history. So as you're watching the speed builds, I did a couple different versions really quickly, just trying to figure out how spaces could work next to each other. I'm also trying to find ways to make this easy to build and, of course, low cost. So doing small things like keeping the kitchen and the bathroom and the laundry space all immediately adjacent will ultimately lower your cost and make it easier to build, because then your plumbing is confined to just one corner of the house. It's little things like that. I'm also trying to keep an eye on things like structure and how the layout could impact potential roof lines, because ultimately we are planning on building this ourselves. None of us are contractors. We need to be able to keep this easy to build with as little heavy equipment as possible. Like, I don't want to have to bring a crane in to do trusses. So the roof line needs to be something that can be built without a crane and trusses. So it's little considerations like that as I'm trying to lay out space and work out some initial massing that will ultimately impact the cost of the building and its ease of construction. And while I'm working on this, we can talk about some of those site features and unknowns that could impact what you can and cannot do. Now, in my area, there is no minimum for house size. There is, however, a maximum. Pretty much every single area has required setbacks from the property line that limits how close to your property line your house can get. It may also have limitations on how much of your property can be covered with hard surface, like home and driveway. Zoning, we're not all that worried about. It's zoned for residential, and what we're building is residential. The site that has been found so far, however, does seem to have some significant grade, so that's going to have to be verified. And an initial way to verify that during this phase is just to go check out the USGS website. They have topographical maps for the public to peruse, and it's a good source of information. Not only can I see what kind of grades we may be looking at, but I can see potentially if there are, for example, streams running through the property that maybe we did not see when we were out there. Also a good resource for determining if there are unknowns is your county auditor website. Our county auditor website in this case gave us a rough idea of the size of the lot, its borders, and gave me an aerial shot with the property line drawn on, which if I layer that over the USGS map, it'll give me a good idea of where the topography sits exactly in the site. Who the current owner is, what its appraised value is. It's all just good research information that'll help inform future phases. With some preliminary layouts done and some studies completed, and a fair amount of the research completed, we can eventually move into the schematic design phase, which I'm hoping to post in a future video. I'm not sure when precisely. It may be off of our usual schedule of every other weekend, but I will try to keep you guys updated on how this moves along. Like I said, we're still trying to determine a lot. Is this the site we're going to go with? What is our budget? And is this the kind of program that we want? But these preliminary designs gives us a good starting point. So thank you for joining me today for this special and different episode of Simming History. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any questions. You can find me on Instagram at Simming History, where I post updates and teasers for upcoming videos when I remember to do so. I will see you all in 2 weeks for a very big build. That's taking quite a lot of time to complete. Until then, bye.